Berkshire News and Politics, bringing you the news and key features from Berkshire, including Reading, Bracknell, Wokingham, Taplow, Slough, Maidenhead and Windsor. This week, Friday the 4th of February 2022, find out about thousands of residents up in arms in Maidenhead, Wokingham and even Reading. Racy news from Bracknell and Wokingham. Adam Afriye MP in trouble yet again. The great Slough Borough Council sell-off. And important election changes to Wokingham and Slough, and how you can get involved or find out more. With a special feature from the Maidenhead Golf Club ahead of the Maidenhead Great Park mass protests outside the Town Hall in Maidenhead on the 8th of February 2022. Featuring James Aldridge, James Bagley, Debbie Ludford, Geoff Hill, Tina Quadrino, Paul Loden and of course Wisdom da Costa. So we're here at the site of the Maidenhead Golf Club, where there is a proposal to build 2,600 houses on 135 acres of land. Green land, wooded land, full of biodiversity, and of course a few humans playing golf. But more interestingly, also people taking advantage of this as an amenity to help with their mental health. So here with Tina Quadrino, Councillor Geoff Hill, and Debbie Ludford. So tell us about this protest on Tuesday. What is it about? How can people join in, and when does it start?
So the protest on Tuesday is to appeal to our councillors in the Royal Borough to reject the borough local plan, purely because it contains the golf course as an area for development. So we're going to be meeting outside the Town Hall at 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 8th, where we will hopefully show some solidarity as a community for the fact that many of us really do not want this to happen. The extraordinary council meeting that has actually been scheduled for the same day but in a different location at the Holiday Inn, that starts at 7 p.m. and we are going to, as many of us as possible, are going to go along to that meeting as well.
So this is a message to the councillors: please do vote or don't vote for the borough local plan.
Vote against the borough local plan because it is very damaging for our green space and for our environment. It is not a sustainable borough local plan.
And how is the borough local plan connected to the proposal to build 2,600 houses here?
If the borough local plan gets accepted or approved, then it means that the council has green light to allow the developer to come in here and build 2,000 houses on this beautiful 132 acres of parkland, and it's just criminal in a climate emergency with the loss of biodiversity. We are one of the least biodiverse countries in Europe. It's just criminal to allow that to happen, and that's the main reason why we just don't need the houses. And it just should not happen.
Now, that's an interesting point. Andrew Johnson to appear on this podcast to talk to us about the proposal to build 2,600 houses here on this land, and of course the borough local plan, which contains that implicit proposal. But he has ignored all of our requests for him to come on the show, or even to send out a statement setting out his position. Councillor Hill, you once called this the green lung of Maidenhead. Why is that?
And I still do, because this is the primary oxygen production factory in Maidenhead. These trees, beautiful trees, there's thousands of them on the golf course, and if the developers have their way, about 60% of these will go, possibly more. So the primary place where pollutants are absorbed, carbon is absorbed and oxygen is produced, which we breathe, goes. And one of the primary places where we soak up nitrogen dioxide from car vehicle and motor car engines will go, and that's a very harmful gas, so we're doing ourselves a lot of damage.
So are you saying that Maidenhead has a pollution issue at the moment with housing, development, transport and so forth?
There is a pollution issue in Bray. Bray Parish Council just released a report only a few days ago that clearly states that nitrogen dioxide levels are above World Health Organisation levels for safety. We also have a safety issue of pollution levels in and around Maidenhead Station, on Frascati Way, on
Which
Greywick Road.
Just round the corner.
Just round the corner. So if we build here, and we have thousands of cars on this site with the 2,000 homes, then we'll aggravate that problem, and we run the risk of having those two highly polluted areas fading into each other, and we have the risk of a very large pollution zone or poor air quality zone running from Maidenhead into Bray.
Okay.
That cannot be sensible, and it mustn't happen.
Okay. Debbie, if I could ask you, why shouldn't we build houses here? Isn't there a need for houses?
So there is a need for houses in our country, but there isn't a need for houses in Maidenhead. So the council is using figures on objectively assessed need. So these project how many houses are needed for our area. They're using figures which are based on 2012 data. The planning inspector in 2020, as part of the Borough Local Plan inspection process, she pointed out that as of 2018 data, these numbers have been halved. So we don't need the houses in this area. And even if we believe that the 2012 figures are correct, our plan, the Borough Local Plan, will actually set out an additional 1,700 homes for the borough. So we don't need to build on Maidenhead Golf Course.
Okay. Now, I remember you saying to me once that this council decision lacked foresight compared to previous councils in Windsor and Maidenhead. Tell me more about that.
So this is greenbelt land, and there are examples in other areas of the country where councils have turned around and said to central government, we're not going to lose our greenbelt for housing. Brighton and Hove is one example. So we feel very strongly that our council should have turned around and said we're not going to lose our green belts. Now, there is a lot of green space in this borough. There's Windsor Great Park, but this is the green space for Maidenhead. And in the future, we want to be able to have places where we can go to locally for amenity, for our health and well-being, physical and mental health and well-being. And it's also a really important place for biodiversity. There are lots of trees here. We estimate about 40% of the land here is woodland, some of it ancient woodland. And there's a lot of protected species here. There are owls, there are bats, there are kestrels, there are red kites. So it's a really important place for wildlife and for people.
Okay. Now, are there any proposals to develop this further from a biodiversity and environmental perspective? Because you talked about the Great Park. What's the sort of proposal for the Great Park?
So what we'd like to see is this place protected for future generations, and then we'd like to see it become a place where climate change can be mitigated against for our community. So sorts of things I'm talking about are tree planting and water storage, community activities, places where children can connect to nature, and also a great park for everyone, so that everybody in our community has an opportunity to walk or cycle to a great park. And we're growing as a town. We've got more than 6,000 new homes have been built, all given planning permission since 2013. Got lots of development in our town already. We're taking about half the borough's development for over the plan period, which is up to 2033. And one of the most important points about this place is that it was actually bought by our council in 1953 for the people of Maidenhead, specifically to keep it open space. And that's how it ended up being greenbelt, to protect it. So we would like to see this kept protected for the people of Maidenhead so that they can decide what the best use of this land is for the future. But it has to be kept green in order to be able to act in the best way possible as we face climate change.
So you're actually proposing a public vote in the future for the people of Maidenhead in how they're going to use this land?
I think that that would be great if we could do that, if we could get the land protected, keep it greenbelt, and then find a way to start a conversation in the community about what's best for this land and how it's best going to serve the people of Maidenhead and their health and well-being.
Okay, thank you. If I can bring in the chairman of the Maidenhead Golf Course, Paul Loden. So Paul, what's your thought about the proposals to build 2,600 houses or even have a developing Maidenhead Great Park here?
Well, I think there's different areas. Building 2,600 houses on here really is a crime in this day and age. Here's greenbelt land, and it's open. It's, as you've seen, there's a fantastic facility here for many people to take part in, and it's a disgrace that this council wants to go and put houses all over it when it doesn't need to. It's not that there's a need for these houses, they're not needed. Simply, it's about money. We all know it's about money. It's been in the paper about money. The council probably would agree it's about money, except they don't. But it is about money. They are going to get 227 million pounds from Cllr Homes, so they can turn this over into housing. Now, that's fine, but they're having to take that money because they made such a mess of the finances over the years. Now, it's all of Maidenhead that suffers from this. I've heard a lot about the green belt, nitrogen, hydrogen, all these things are being sucked up and used and turned over by the trees, etc. But we also suck up all of the water. This is on the top of a hill. This is a great reservoir here. If this gets built over, where's that water going? It's cascading down over Walker Road and places like that, and Harvest Hill Road. So it's a criminal thing that they're going to undertake to do, and they're doing it just because of their own capability has fallen apart.
So what will happen to the golf club as a whole if there is no development here? What are the proposals?
Well, if there's no development here, our lease currently runs until 2039. We've had to sign under duress an agreement at the moment that we'll leave the property by the end of 2025. But if that doesn't go through, if the borough, it's determined on the borough plan being adopted, if the borough plan is not adopted, then we can stay with our current contract, which will run through till the end of 2039. What happens after them is about a story and a discussion for us all to have about how we develop and how we take things forward. And I don't think, if you look at the last 2 years, for example, that the change that's happened to society in the UK and the future and the fact that people are now talking about development of green belts or how we're going to involve the public more in these things. I think there's a great scope in the future. But for the first time, what you do is you don't do anything. You don't take this out of green belt. You leave the golf club playing here. You save 16 million pounds because you get it back because it'll never come to us. So it's a win-win for them. They just don't need to do it and take it away and trouble houses all over it.
So how would you be asking the councillors to vote on Tuesday?
Well, they should vote against the borough plan because it's not a sound thing, despite the fact the inspector at the end put some stuff together to tell them it's sound, but it's not a sound item. It's based on one thing alone. Okay,
so there it is. You've heard it from the chairman of the Maidenhead Golf Club. He would like councillors to vote against the borough local plan. So before we close, I'm going to just go back to Tina and say, Tina, remind us again about the event on Tuesday.
So on Tuesday we have a demonstration outside the town hall at 6 p.m. And we will then be, as many people as possible can then join the actual council meeting at 7 p.m. at the Holiday Inn. And if you want to find out more information about Maidenhead Great Park, then we have a website, which is maidenheadgreatpark.co.uk. We have a Facebook page and group, which is Maidenhead Great Park. We are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, and you can contact us through any of those mediums, and we will give you more information about what you can do to help support us in this campaign.
So here we go from a very chilly Maidenhead golf course. And speaking to Debbie Ludford, Councillor Geoff Hill, Tina Quadrino and the Chairman Paul Louden. Now, we did ask Cllr Andrew Johnson to come on the show, but he has refused, as I said, on a number of occasions. Or should I say, he didn't even give me the privilege of a refusal. He actually has ignored all of our requests for his comments and the comments from the council. So thank you for your comments, and I expect you'll be looking forward to everyone.
I welcome you all to the town hall on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
So we've got James Bagley on screen at the moment. James, how are you?
Too bad, thank you. How about yourself, Wisdom?
Very well. So has it been an interesting time in Slough and Windsor and Maidenhead and in around the area that you cover?
Yeah, quite a lot has happened over the last 2 weeks. So I guess kicking off with the Slough elections. Now, last time I was on your show, Wisdom, I said the council submitted a letter to the government requesting to postpone this year's election. Just a bit of background before I move on. Slough usually do their elections by thirds, and now so that means that a third of councillors are elected every year. But now they're swapping to all-out elections, which happens every 4 years from 2023. Now, Labour requested the government to postpone this election, this year's election.
Let's just be clear, in Slough, it's the Labour Party who are in control here, so it's the ruling group's decision to postpone the elections for this year.
Yes, it was primarily Labour who submitted this letter to government, and now we've got a response back, and it's a no from the government. So that means the Slough electorate will have their say at this year's election before they swap over to all-out elections with new internal ward boundaries.
I'm fascinated by this. So was it the Labour Party or the council that proposed to switch to all out and actually cancel this year's elections, or was it, so which of the two actually proposed this?
Okay, so the proposals were in sections. So to move to all-out elections, that was from a cross-party group made up of the Conservatives and Labour councillors, and everyone's in agreement with that. But where everyone was not in agreement was postponing this year's election, and the Conservatives and the one independent councillor voted against that. So technically, in the motion, it is the council that sent that request to postpone, but really, technically, it is Labour that sent that letter.
Okay. And how have the opposition councillors and even the Labour Party councillors and the independent council, how have they received this news?
Well, the Conservatives are quite happy with that. When this was read out at a full council meeting, it was read out by the mayor, who read out Kemi Badenoch's letter, who's the Living Up minister, saying she couldn't support it and the Slough electorate should have their say. The leader of the Conservatives, Dexter Smith, said, "Hooray for democracy." So, but was later told to shut up by Councillor Rob Anson, who's the lead member for financial oversight.
And a Labour Party member.
Yeah, and a Labour Party member, of course.
I'm fascinated by this. I'm fascinated that actually the election could go either way. It could be the Slough electorate saying, sorry, Labour Party, you've really messed things up, so we want you out. Equally, it could be a referendum on Boris.
Perhaps. So, like some of the Slough battleground, shall we say, like Langley, Kidderminster, those would be really interesting to see, because usually it's a close call between Labour and the Conservatives. But Labour have said that this election is kind of pointless or redundant, to quote them precisely, because Labour controls a majority of the council, so it's a 42-seat council, and there's only 5 Conservatives and 1 independent. So even if this year's goes ahead, we're not going to see the Labour Party losing control of the council.
Absolutely.
There might be a reduction, but maybe not a lot.
Very little effect in terms of policy change, but it would allow people to express their views on either local or national politics, I suppose. So elections going ahead, May 22, not very long to go. If people are interested in standing, how can they find out more? Well,
usually you go on the council website and you can, if you want to go be a councillor, then you can submit a form. I think you've got to pay a fee though, if I remember correctly.
No fees payable, certainly not in Windsor.
Okay, I made that up then. You might want to cut that out then.
I think if you want to stand in the general election, yes, there is a deposit of £500, but it's free to stand as a local representative. So go for it, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
What next? Anything else happening in Slough? Or is Slough fairly quiet?
Coming off that meeting, the full council meeting where the Slough elections were going to go ahead, the council will be selling off nearly £300 million of their assets. Now, the council has 1.2 billion worth of assets. That's in Slough and out of Slough. So I think the most famous one, shall we say, is the Odeon Cinema in Basingstoke. and this is to reduce their borrowing, which is gone up to £760 million, and also reduce their budget gap, which over the next 5 years, which is £308 million. Just a little asterisk there, that is still subject to change, so it could be even more than £308 million.
So let's just get this right. So they want to sell off a quarter of their assets, quarter of the family silver's going, to raise money to pay off some of the 706 £763 billion of debt. But this may have a positive impact on the fact that they can't beat, if you like, make ends meet. Their income and their cost. The income is far lower than their cost. Is that about right?
Yes, and I should also say that this is just for this year and next year. So there's capitalisation directive, which is what it's called. You're asking permission from government to sell off your assets. You can use the capital funds from it for the revenue, which is day-to-day spending.
Okay.
So over there,
it's a bit of sleight of hand there. So actually, you want to sell them off and use the money to prop up their overspending.
Yes, and also, like I said, this is just the first one, and keep in mind they're thinking about setting up to £600 million worth of assets.
If they're selling off property to deal with their underfunding or their overspending, then quite frankly, they could sell off on all £1.2 billion, still have a £750 million of debt, and still be in trouble in 4 years' time.
Yes, but keeping in mind, though, councils do need another funding source, because, as you know, funding from central government that to councils has gone down drastically. So in the George Osborne years, for example, he pretty much said to councils, "Look, we're not going to give you a lot of money. So what we recommend is that you invest into businesses, assets, so you can use that income into your revenue or your capital spending, whatever you want to do for it, pretty much." So that's why, I spoke to the council leader ages ago, back when the money trouble started, and he said that Slough's always been revenue poor but capital rich.
Sounds like it'd soon be capital poor and revenue poor.
Yeah, so, so they've got 6,700 assets. So that includes properties and land.
6.7 billion, is it, in total?
That's 1.2 billion.
1.2 billion.
Or that's all worth 1.2 billion.
Yeah.
Now, I also have to say at this stage, it's unknown which assets are going to be sold off. That is not known. The council have been quite tight-lipped about that, but we should know hopefully either this month or next month, I've been told.
Okay, so given this nature of assets in Slough, it's not as if they're selling a huge chunk of Salthill Park or some of their other parks. So it doesn't look as if selling off these assets will make a big difference to the lives of ordinary residents, other than the fact that they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, perhaps.
Not necessarily. And first of all, yes, the parks are going to be protected, and council tenants are going to be protected. So I'm told. But no, some of these buildings they do belong to the residents. Again, as I said, I don't know which assets are going to go, but Observatory House, which is the council's HQ, that could go. The centre, which is the leisure centre on Farnham Road, that could go. I'm just speculating here because, again, as I said, I don't know. But the point is, those assets belong to the residents because they use them.
Well, that's an interesting point you raise. If they're actually going to protect the parks, are they protecting all of the other leisure assets? That would be possibly very useful for Slough residents to know about. Wow, that sounds like they continue through the stormy waters and dire times, and this is just a short gap measure, in my view, from just listening to what you're saying, to try and survive for the next 2 years.
Yeah, and even more assets are going to go. So keep in mind, we've still got £300 million to go, up to £300 million up to go. Okay,
and where can people find out more about these two stories that you're covering about the Slough elections and also the sale of 25% of their assets?
Yeah. Okay. So you can go on the Slough Observer website, or you can follow my Twitter, which is Bagley, Bagley, LDR.
Okay. Are you on Instagram?
Not professionally, no.
Oh, come on, James. You've got to catch it. You've got to inspire your generation as well.
Yeah, I did go on TikTok or something, eh?
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Put some of these on video on TikTok. Great. Well, okay. What next? Over to Windsor and Maidenhead.
Yep. So Windsor, so Wisdom. I'm very sure that you're anticipating this one, but the borough local plan is finally set to be adopted by council next week. It's going to be held at the Holiday Inn. So, a little background on the borough local plan. It's been over a decade now in the making. So, what a borough local plan is, it sort of sets out and earmarks sites and takes some sites out of the greenbelt for development. So, where thousands of new homes are going to go. To meet the Royal Borough's rising population, its economic growth, etc. And it has been quite a contentious one over the years, quite emotional, because there's quite a few green belts that will be released if this local plan is adopted, although it is recommended for it to be adopted. And I think the most contentious site, of course, and that's been in the local press and even BBC for that matter, is the Maidenhead Golf Course.
And we spoke to Tina Quadrino, Debbie Ludford, Geoff Hill earlier on in the show, and yes, they had some interesting things to say about this.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they do, and they even, I'm pretty sure they even mentioned it to you that they are planning a third protest this right outside the Maidenhead Town Hall, opposing the over 2,000 home development at the Maidenhead Golf Course. That's why the borough local plan is so controversial. So the campaign group are saying, well, the housing need in the Royal Borough is half from 2,600 odd to around about 6,000.
One of the interesting questions that they raised was in relation to Councillor Ross McWilliams, who I understand has some interest in one of the developers, Cllr Homes. So have you had any word from Ross as to whether he'll be attending the vote and whether he'll stand back from the vote because of any vested interests?
Yeah, I did speak to him actually, and he did send me a statement about it because his private employer sort of do public relations on behalf of Cllr Homes, who will be bringing a planning application forward for Maidenhead Golf Course in due course. It's unknown to me when that will happen.
2,600 homes. So it's a multi-billion-pound project by the sound of it.
Yeah, that's including Harvest Hill, remember. So the golf course itself is for over 2,000 homes. But yeah, from what Councillor McWilliams said to me, who is also the lead member for housing, that he's taken advice from the monitoring officer, Emma Duncan, and he will be voting on the borough local plan, following advice from Emma Duncan.
Do you think that justice or democracy is being done and seeing to be done by him taking part in that vote?
Well,
as a layman,
he doesn't. Well, from what he told me, he doesn't get involved with Cllr Homes, and he put it in his private contract with his employer that he doesn't get involved with any Cllr Homes developments in the Royal Borough. And I understand this is an emotional topic, but if the monitoring officer said that he's fit, then I suppose so. But I'm coming from a neutral perspective here.
Okay, all right. And of course, the monitoring officer has also famously said that it's their responsibility to serve the administration.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. What's happening in Windsor? Anything less controversial, potentially?
Well, I think I don't know about less controversial, but Windsor MP Adam Afriye is in trouble again.
Again.
I know.
How many times is that now? 4 times?
Yeah, over the last few years. But yeah, he's under investigation from the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards. Now, he's a chairman of Elite Growth, who are a distribution company for medical cannabis. And now this is all in the Times. So the Times reported that he's lobbied government over medical cannabis. But he hasn't declared an interest. I mean, that is an interest, that if he's a chairman for a company, he's the chairman for a company that distributes medical cannabis, but he hasn't declared that. It's only just recently, early in January, that he has.
How do you forget something like that? It's very fundamental. You tell people who you're working for, and that.
Yes, I mean, rules, parliamentary rules, that is, do require members to do that, to register an interest that can conflict, like how a member can talk or act in what's in the House of Commons.
So he's involved now in potentially canvassing government and to actually improve the laws or make them more amenable for the company that he's chairman of, and he's also got obviously his own business interests. To be honest, it's a wonder he's got time to be an MP. But that's a personal comment, being one of his constituents and never seeing him. Adam, we love you loads. Please come on the show. Please come to Windsor. So how does that, where's this all going for Adam with all of these different complaints and concerns about his conduct over the last few years?
Well, I don't know, but where it'll completely lead him, I think maybe this will be the least of his worries, though. I'm sure you've heard that HMRC are taking bankruptcy action against him over unpaid bills from his crumbling business empire. So from what I understand from The Guardian, he owes at least £1.7 million in unpaid taxes to HMRC. Now that could possibly lead to a by-election, although it's very unlikely at this stage, because the Windsor Liberal Democrats are sort of banking on that, but he's kind of insisted that it's not going to happen as he's working with HMRC right now.
And perhaps a white knight might appear on a shining white horse riding over the hill to Mr.
What name, Boris Johnson?
I don't know his involvement with Mr. Johnson at all. Well, not that
No.
Mr. Johnson anyway.
No, I'm just joking, by the way. That's a joke.
Of course you are, yes. Wow, thank you very much. So how can people find out more about these stories and the things you're talking about, not just with the borough local plan, but with Councillor McWilliams, Kyla Holmes, Adam Afriye, the MP, and all the other issues that are happening in Windsor politics? Yeah,
so it's all on Windsor Observer. So windsorobserver.co.uk, or you can again find it on my Twitter, Bagley LDR, BAGLEY LDR.
Perfect. James, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week or in 2 weeks' time.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So now we're going to move over to talk about Reading, Bracknell, Wokingham, and we've got James Aldridge on the line, who's the local democracy reporter for all of this area. James, how are you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you.
Good. So I'm going to start with the most popular, what could be the most popular stories. Let's start with this housing development in Reading. I understand that a planning application has been submitted and has received a record number of responses in objection. Tell us about this.
Yeah, that's right. So on the Reading Borough Council's planning portal, or any planning portal, people can write comments, how they feel about certain plans. And last year, late last year, there was a plan submitted to Reading Borough Council to build 223 homes on Reading Golf Course, which is off Kidmore End in Emma Green, which is in the Caversham area, and to build homes on that site. And that has received over 4,000 objections from neighbours and members of the public. And that's broken a record for the amount of objections to a plan that Reading Borough Council has received.
Okay, 4,000 is enormous. Last time, how many did they receive? When it was submitted last time, it failed. Is that right?
Yeah. It's not the first time that there's been a plan for this site. for the Reading golf course to be redeveloped into a housing development. There was one plan which I believe was for 260 homes to be built on the golf course. That got about 2,000 objections, and the developers actually withdrew those plans. And then they submitted another plan for 257 homes. That got over 3,000 objections. That went to Reading Borough Council's planning committee, and it got rejected last year. And now the most recent ones for a small amount of homes, 223, has now amassed over 4,000 objections, and I think many of those came over the Christmas holiday season. So people weren't distracted. It seems with festivities, they actually went ahead and wrote their objections in, and it's broken a record.
Wow! So we'll watch that story with interest to see whether or not actually a reduced number of houses on that plot actually now complies with whatever the planning laws are, or whether the residents will win out here.
Yeah, well, I mean, the developers have said that they want to build 2, 3, and 4 bedroom homes on the site to fulfil the need for family homes in Reading. So homes which families can live in, where you've got about 3 bedrooms, so you can live in and raise a family. And over the last 3 years, from 2018 to 2021. 44% of the new housing built in Reading was 1 bedroom, so a plurality was a plurality there. So the developers are arguing we want to make more family homes, but a golf course has to go if that can happen.
But I understand that the golf course is not being used at the moment.
No, it's not being used. So the Reading Golf Club moved to, I believe, the Caversham Golf Club. They're quite a few, but they moved from the original golf course site in off Kidmore End Road in Emma Green to, I believe, the Caversham Golf Course, which is northwest of Caversham.
Right. Now, who owns this site?
So the Reading Golf Course, they still own the site, and they've got developer partners. And I understand they want to generate some income for themselves and secure their long-term future by having a development on their original grounds.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see how this moves forward. Whether there are any substantive planning reasons to maintain this ground for biodiversity reasons, or even within the local plan. I look forward to sort of finding out more about that. So. Sticking with Reading, I understand that there's been a bit of a political roundabout, people going in and out from one party to another. What's happening in Reading with the councillors?
Okay, sure. So Councillor David Stevens, who was a long-serving Conservative councillor for the Thames ward, and one of the most recent mayors from 2020 to 2021, he's defected from the Conservatives to the Labour Party, and he's done that. He said that he's worked closely with Reading Borough Council's ruling Labour Party, and yeah, he said now's the time to make a move, and so he switched. And he served as the mayor for 18 months, and he said he's sort of excited to kind of do his bit for Reading, continue to doing his bit on Reading Borough Council.
So, with only 3 months to go to the election, why is he resigning now, or rather, why is he crossing the floor now?
Well, I understand that he had been deselected to run again as a Conservative councillor from what I understand is a new ward being created in Reading. So he had to. well, he was facing being deselected effectively.
Okay.
So I suppose he's now found his new political home in the Labour Party, but he's not the only person to have switched parties. Councillor David Maskell, who is a Labour councillor for the Battle Ward, he has left the Labour Party now. He was under investigation for social media posts and wasn't able to engage in Reading Labour Party activities while the investigation took place. So he said he had to continue to pay his dues. So instead of paying his dues anymore, he's jumped ship from the Labour Party. He hasn't resigned either. He'll continue working as a councillor, but he'll be an independent councillor now.
Okay. Well, it's going to be an uphill struggle to try and beat the Labour Party in his area as an independent struggle. But good luck to him. May the best candidate win. And also, Councillor Stevens, I suppose, is going to re-emerge in a local ward in the guise of a Labour Party candidate.
Yeah, that's right. So there's that's right. There's a new Caversham Heights ward, which will be a new ward coming in the local elections this year. Councillor Jeanette Skeets, who's the leader of the Conservative Party on Reading Borough Council, said that David Stevens was unsuccessful in his bid to be selected as a candidate, which means that they'll select someone new to run there. Now David Stevens, instead of becoming an independent or just retiring from council work in general, he's found a new home in the Labour Party.
Okay, well, it looks like he'll be relying on some of the good work he's done for his constituents to see if they will vote for him. Good luck to him.
I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, so Reading sort of covered to an extent. I understand that in Wokingham and Bracknell there's been lots of problems with errant motorists. Tell us what's happening there, and more importantly, what are the police doing about it?
Okay, so they're well, in the last month, so in January, there've been some reports of car meets occurring. So this is where people with fast and tuned cars and that sort of thing like to meet in car parks and have a chat and that sort of thing. But there is concern about antisocial activity going on at these events, and possible illegal activity in cases where people are speeding, for example, or doing donuts and making a disturbance with loud noise coming from the exhaust of their cars. So I understand there was sort of drift racing going on in Jennetts Park in Bracknell that was reported last month, and also there are concerns about a car meets going on in Wokingham too. So this is it spans both areas.
What sort of time are these occurring?
As far as I'm aware, definitely the Jennetts Park one was happening during the night. So it's dark, probably when the roads are quieter. But yeah, there is people are concerned about the noise coming from these events and possible speeding.
Is this a new problem in that area? And if so, where are people coming from?
Well, I think it varies. It's sort of seasonal. It has been mentioned sporadically every now and again. And it's it's an issue that springs up depending on where the car meet takes place. More often than not, there's not going to be a car meet in these car parks, but then these incidents do occur, and people are concerned about the antisocial driving coming from some of the drivers at these events. Okay. Now, what police can do is that if a car is caught being driven illegally or speeding or driving in an antisocial manner, police can slap an order on these cars. And if these cars are spotted being driven in an antisocial manner again, the police can actually impound the car or vehicle and seize them.
That's a bit of a long game, though, isn't it? Sort of waiting for one complaint and then another. And of course, you have to be up and awake at that time of night to make the complaint or for the police to be there. So that sort of begs two sort of questions. One, I presume that are the police saying that residents should call 111 as soon as things happen, and are the police saying they will be present in greater numbers?
I suppose it depends on what they're dealing with at the time. There might be cases where police already have intelligence of a car meet and send community support officers to engage with the drivers there and trying to make sure that sort of order is maintained and that people are staying safe and legal. That's my understanding of it. But there was a big protest in Wokingham against these car meets, these which maybe can get rowdy sometimes. That took place a few weekends ago in Wokingham. There people calling for illegal driving activity to end, and probably calling for the police to do more about these things. But yeah, there probably is a risk involved that if a driver is caught driving in an antisocial manner 2 times, then their beloved car or vehicle could go. So that maybe that's a deterrent. I don't know.
All right. And has the Police and Crime Commissioner said anything about this? I understand that he has how would you put it? He has some sort of initiative called Community Speed Watch.
Yeah. So that's to do with the broader topic of speeding, and what that involves is people can get involved in community speed watch groups. What they do is they receive speed trapping and monitoring equipment from either a council or from Police and Crime Commissioner funding, and what these people do is they volunteer to record speeds in their area, and if people are speeding, if they do catch someone speeding, they can read a number plate, and that information can get sent on to the police to prosecute. So it's a little bit of volunteer policing going on there, where the public speed trap people, but again, it's up to the police to prosecute these things, not the members of the public themselves.
Absolutely. It's lots of long game items there, but in the short term, dial 111, make sure you report it.
Yeah, and also you can. There's a Community Speed Watch website, so if you search for that, you can learn how to get involved. You can also contact the Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner, and also local councillors to see whether there's a Community Speed Watch in your area. One councillor, Jill Birch, I spoke to last month about it. She said that the Speed Watch campaign in her area has not quite got off the ground yet, but they're eager to get going. But people require training to get involved in these speed watch programs to make sure things are safe. But once those training programs are done and dates are organised, they'll be going out on a regular basis to try and catch drivers if they're speeding.
Okay, I tell you what, we must get Matthew Barber on to a show in a couple of weeks' time, and we can discuss this issue. So Matthew, if you're listening, you're invited, and if not, you'll get a call from me. Right, let's move out to Wokingham then. And Wokingham are looking to try and stage all-out elections. I understand that, like Slough, we've also made a similar application. They want to move to elections all out every 4 years and not have an election every year, 3 years, and then nothing for a year.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So what's happened is Wokingham Borough Council's executive committee, which is the ruling body, which is made up entirely of Conservatives. They are going ahead with a public consultation, to move to all-out elections, which means that all the councillors serve 4-year terms, and then they get elected or re-elected on a 4-year election cycle. And the proposal has been put forward by the executive committee and the leader of Wokingham Borough Council, Councillor John Horsall, who said that the council can tangibly save £316,000 per year by not having these regular yearly elections. And he also said that the saving could even be £1 million due to the intangible cost of having an election period regularly.
I can understand both of those issues, both in terms of the direct costs and, of course, the loss in productivity when you take officers away from their day-to-day job and put them on to dealing with election issues. So, yeah, there's a lot of merit in what he's saying there. Is there any upset or concern that actually, although it's going to cost us more to run elections, we're actually getting a better quality of democracy?
Yeah. Opinions vary. So the leader of the opposition on Wokingham Borough Council, Councillor Clive Jones, who's a Liberal Democrat and represents an area in Lower Early, he says he prefers it the way things are now, where there are 3 yearly elections and people do get more of a regular chance to have their say as to the direction of the council, which is a defensible opinion. However, one resident that I got a comment on social media from one resident said that there could be a chance that the overall controller of the council is more likely to switch with 4 yearly elections. So it could mean a wave election for the Liberal Democrats, which could bring them to power, or could mean that the council, no party has control over the council anymore. So that's also an interesting point to make, which maybe the Liberal Democrats may benefit from. However, yeah, I mean, last year in the local elections, the Conservatives were still the dominant party. So we'll just have to see how these things go.
Okay. So it's a moot point. We don't really know whether it's going to impact the quality of democracy. Will more people turn out? Will people get into a habit of voting, or will it swing on national issues as it might do on a 4 yearly election? We've no idea. So the jury's out, but it sounds like they are making some progress. There's going to be some changes. There's going to be greater levels of alignment around the country with 4 yearly all-out elections.
That's the point about people being swayed by national issues is exactly the point that Councillor Clive Jones, leader of the opposition, did make. He said that he was worried about that.
It'd be interesting to understand what the sort of percentage of people who number of votes in the actual annual elections.
Yeah, I mean, from my memory of covering the Wokingham Borough Council elections last year, turnout hovered around 30%. So rather low. However, that was when the country was still under lockdown. So you'd hope those numbers may increase this year. And people, activists were restricted in the way that they could campaign as well. I wrote about that last year. So this year, you'd imagine things might be a bit different, and people would be allowed to have a bit more of a campaign to put their point across.
Okay. James, thank you for joining us. Now, where can people find out more about all of these stories that you're writing and read in more depth what you're covering?
Okay, sure. So all of my I'm a local democracy reporter, which is a scheme funded by the BBC, but all of my articles get published on the Reading Chronicle and the Bracknell News. So if there's topics that you're interested in, search Reading Chronicle and Bracknell News, and that will direct you. So if you're interested about the issues surrounding the sort of speeding cars or the car meets, head over to the Bracknell News and search that, and you'll be able to find the information there. For the political drama taking place in Reading, in Reading Borough Council, you can find that on the Reading Chronicle. You can find my articles on the Reading Chronicle, and these political defections have also been picked up by other media organisations as well, particularly regarding Councillor Chris Maskell, who actually left the Labour Party to stand as an independent. the other media companies did cover it. However, if you want the reasons why he resigns, then you can see that on the Reading Chronicle, because I was able to get bespoke quotes from him, and then also the idea, Wokingham all-out election proposals, again on the Bracknell News. All my articles get published on the Reading Chronicle and the Bracknell News. So if you search James Aldridge and the topic you're interested in and the publication, you'll be able to find more information on all of those topics.
Great, thank you, James. And we look forward to sort of seeing you again in a few weeks' time. I know that we'll try and get Matthew Barber on, and we've got in our next show, we will have Slough Youth Parliament on, so that'll be interesting to hear from these young people what they're doing and how they plan to get involved with shaping their future. And we're here, you and I as voters and people involved in some level of politics, trying to shape the future now, but it'll be great to hear what they're thinking as well. James, as ever, it's great to hear what's happening in your patch in your area, and good to hear your voice. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.